Lake is a new, relaxing walking simulator indie game. It's a story about Meredith Weiss, some chick who works real hard, who needs to take a 2-week vacation and decides to take that by going back to her hometown after 22 years of being gone. And because she's so crazy, decides to get a job on her vacation. For a quick answer, no, Lake should not be purchased, at least not for its hefty 20 USD price tag. This is due to the game itself and some drama with the devs. I will be getting into exactly why later. Lake claims not to be in early access, but the devs keep talking about adding things like camera angles and features. So is it or is it not early access? On paper, no. But in principle, this isn't finished, and the devs definitely know that. Going into the devs, Gamius is a low-level game producer. Their claim to fame is a game called Turmoil, a management sim which did receive good response and seems to be a decently made game. It's clear, however, they have since gotten into the habit of cutting corners. Just by looking at their website, you can tell that they do this. It's very simplistic without a lot of detail, just barely what you need to call a dev website, which will be a theme going forward into this review. This is a fairly short experience, coming in at almost exactly 5 hours. Before we go much further, I want to thank everyone for liking, commenting, and subscribing to Help Us Grow. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well to get notified of all the reviews and gaming news that we produce. Moving on, let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay consists of Meredith driving her mail truck around the lake town delivering mail, which, on paper, sounds boring but is par for the course for these walking simulators, and isn't the reason to not recommend this game. In fact, these parts are executed mostly pretty well. As Meredith delivers packages, she meets people who live in her old hometown, some new, some the same old people she knew from her childhood. Occasionally, they will give you quests and activities, and I say activities lightly, to do so outside of the main driving jobs. At one point, I was teleported to an event across the map before I could get in my mail truck for that day, and it was left behind. After a quick search, the forums led me to discover that there was a fast travel feature of the game, and when used put me right back in the truck and able to keep moving on. The glitch was small, and ultimately didn't impact much, so it's not going to affect the final review for me. During conversations with people, the player can select up to 3 options to have Meredith respond with, and a small few of these choices do have impact on the ending of the game. That's about all there is to say about the gameplay, not too much to it to be honest, and again, for a walking simulator, that is fine. Let's go to the good. It's not going to be a super long section because it's all about the gameplay, and I know we just talked about the gameplay, but I want to reiterate that the bones of this game are solid with very few glitches coming up. Moving on to the bad. Number 1 is going to be the animation. Lake's animation is weird and emotionless sometimes. It's like you're looking into the dead face of some monster when you're looking at certain characters, especially Meredith towards the end of the game. There are also tons of things that could have and should have been animated, or even a still frame put up or something to show what Meredith is doing when the activities go outside of gameplay. For example, at one point, Meredith can go help out on a farm with a couple of other people. Instead of showing her and her love interest working together or something goofy to build chemistry, they just fade to black and put Meredith back home, which is disappointing, to be honest. And this is the theme for the activities that you do after work. People call you, ask you to do things, like an old friend wanting you to babysit. Your arrival to do so is this.
Alright, who wants s'mores?
So, yeah, not very compelling. Next up's the music. The music itself isn't actually bad, but there's just too few tracks to be played. I think I counted 5 max. To clarify, you're hearing the radio for at least 4 out of the 5 hours in this game, so these tracks can get old quick, especially since they are really the same style of music. I mean, even the characters in the game are self-aware enough to call this out.
It's really nice.
Thanks, but I really need to add more songs.
Or they could even have more radio host and guest interactions to spice up the monotony of the radio, as all you get is a brief character interaction in the morning and the weather for the day, and that's it. And on this topic of spicing up the road, nothing ever happens between routes from delivery to delivery. It would have been a nice addition to the game to have a few random encounters. In fact, I think it would have improved the game greatly. The drama. There is some minor drama with the devs and their claim on game length. Evidently, they've been saying a quote-unquote rush playthrough is 4 to 5 hours, an average playthrough is 7 to 8, and some players even extended that out to 20 plus hours. On its face, after handling the game, this is a ridiculous assertion and is either an invincible optimism or an outright lie. as far as an average playthrough of 7 to 8 hours and 20 plus hours of gameplay to experience if one wishes. Upon receiving the game, the dedicated community have obviously called them out on this absurdity. Let's look at some reviews to evidence the point. We see here this guy with a negative review. Some context. This user has been all over the forums defending the devs in the weeks leading up to the game release. In here, even he is disappointed with the game length, going so far as to say they lied about the game length. We do have a dev response where they clarified that, quote, to some, playing Lake also means driving around, chilling out, and doing stuff like climbing the watchtower, sitting on benches, and seeing all the different things, unquote. To explain, this is all stuff that I encountered on my game time, and I played for a max of 5.5 hours with some AFKing while I sorted out that one glitch I had. The user responds to the dev with more criticism, saying, quote, to answer the dev also here, sitting on the benches? Really? $19.99 to sit on benches for 20 hours? I don't even know what to say. And climbing the watchtower didn't even take 30 seconds, unquote. For my own part, I actually did try and go off the beaten path in regard to the watchtower specifically, and was rewarded with this stunning dialogue.
The watchtower. My old stomping ground.
Yeah, that's it. And then you climb it, and nothing is at the top. Moving on to the story. The story falls short, unfortunately, which is obviously a miss in a story-based game. It drags for the first 2.5 hours and gets a little bit exciting for a half hour, and then proceeds to drag again for the last 2.5 hours. It has this neat plot in there where your coworker has been doing illegal things and could get fired. It seems very intense, and then he just shows back up again and you continue to play as normal. It seems just like such a wasted opportunity for something interesting. As with most of these games that claim choices matter, they don't really. Only a few at the end seem to have much impact, and it's really about what romance Meredith is interested in. Gay lady or straight man? I picked the man because I'm a sucker for a rugged beard. Just kidding. I picked the man because he wasn't written quite as bad as the woman. I couldn't even tell the woman was romancing Meredith until the last conversation you have with her, where you have to give the I like you or I don't like you ultimatum. Also, let's talk about how odd this premise really is, that you go to town for a couple weeks and talk to this lumberjack 6 times, and decide to stay with him in this dying town? That's a real choice to make? And the other choices aren't any better. This game is one of those that also suffers illusion that your choices in dialogue will elicit different responses, but in certain portions of the game this is obviously false, and just sounds super awkward. It should also be noted that there is pretty much no replayability here. Even if you could push through another 5 hours, there aren't any interesting end cards or explanations of Meredith's life moving forward. Your choice just stands, and that's it. Credits roll, and you're at the title screen. Let's talk about the cut corners. How you meet people in the start of the game is you drop off mail and parcels to them, and then they strike up conversation and you start being friends. When you start your second week, around the 2.5 hour mark, you just sort of stop meeting people. The cast has had its due, and that's all you get. Almost every single package is left with a, alright, I'll leave it on the doorstep. And
Nope, no answer. Alright, I'll leave it on the doorstep. I guess
and
nobody's
no
home.
interaction. I had begun thinking that this was it for new characters. Until about the 4 hour mark, that is, when I met a new character, even had a little interaction with him, but they never even bothered to make a model for him. They just show Meredith talking to a wall while he talks back at her. There are just straight up wasted characters as well, like Matt, who works at the motel and plays computer games and is generally rude to Meredith. They could have done something here, like make a real conflict between Meredith and Matt, or maybe an opportunity to become friends over their love of computers, or almost anything other than useless dialogue for a, frankly, purposeless character. There is a lack of tutorials for the game. As I mentioned before, I had to discover fast travel on the forums instead of the game telling me it was a possibility. Some in the forums have suggested that this was to pad out gameplay and make the game longer, and this would explain Meredith's very slow walking speed as well. In conclusion, Lake is a game. Sorta. But it's overpriced, and even if you could pick it up for $2 to $5, I'd say just save your time, to be completely honest. There's nothing really special here other than the at first interesting gimmick of being a postal worker, which wears thin quickly. All in all, I'd say it has a rating of one girl sadly delivering parcels.